Today what we're going to be looking at is the Esker Japhy J2. It is a chromoly steel hardtail by Esker Cycles, who is based out of Montana. They make bikes to order, so this is a very special machine. With it being special, it does retail for a pretty high figure. This hardtail costs $3,300 US. That is correct, I said $3,300, and that is before tax. So it's a very special hardtail, probably the nicest hardtail I'll ever ride, or maybe second nicest hardtail if we think about one other one that I've ridden in the past. Yeah, second nicest. But what's good about this one is it actually fits me, whereas the other one was a small. So I was very excited to ride this bike to see what it was all about. It took forever to get here because it got tied up at the distribution hub due to the hurricane. But once it finally got here, I spent a little bit of time posing by the box. And then, of course, I popped open the box to see what was inside. When I had seen the Jaffy online, it came in a bright orange color. I was surprised to see that this one was more of like a forest green, almost even like a smoky gunmetal. Kind of like bridges the gap between those two colors. It's really, really a nice color with some beautiful metallic flake in it. And I got it up on the stand and started to build it immediately. I can't wait and hang around. I'm ready to get it on the trail as fast as possible so I can start to enjoy it. As I started to assemble it, I noticed a lot of really nice bits that you don't get on, cheaper bikes, like the wolf tooth remote that had Esker branding on it. That was really cool, as well as a wolf tooth top cap that has the Esker branding on it. Normally those parts are going to be more generic. This bike also had a lot of parts that I've never ridden and I was quite excited to try, like SRAM's new G2 brakes, as opposed to the older generation guide brakes that weren't so hot. It also has the MRP Raven fork, a fork that I've never ridden at all. The only MRP products I've ever had were just supporting mods like chain guides and bash guards. I've never tried any of their bigger components like forks, so really stoked to try that out. As far as the wheels are concerned, Industry 9. So that's where some of the cost comes in. It's the Industry 9 1-1 hubs with the Enduro hoops, and they are 29 inches. And the tires that are mounted to those rims are 2.8. So this is technically a 29 plus tire bike. That's another thing that I've never ridden before and I was excited to try. As far as the drivetrain, that was being delivered by SRAM with the new expansion version of GX, which features that 52-tooth massive cassette in the rear. Excited to try that as well, because up until then, I had only tried the GX in the 50-tooth variant. And expansion has not only that new cassette, but a new derailleur mech as well. So that should theoretically change the way it feels a good bit. It also has a WTB Volt saddle. I've ridden those. SDG Tellus dropper, great dropper, ridden them plenty. And that pretty much sums up the spec, because again, with it being a hardtail, there's not a whole lot going on. It's a much more simplistic ride when it doesn't have the rear linkage and a rear shock. And for $3,300, I would say that you're probably getting your money's worth. But again, that is quite easily full suspension money. So the question is, how does a bike like this perform on the trail? Going into the ride, I can tell you this, I was a little bit nervous to try the things that I was perfectly comfortable on with my Siskiyou T7, particularly large drops or jumps, because of the fact that I know that if something isn't quite right, the rear end of the bike is not going to be correcting it. There's no suspension to fix my mistakes. It's just going to buck me. But surprisingly enough, I did finally muster up the guts to try some of those bigger features, not all of them, but some of them, just to see how the bike would do, and it did quite fine. And I accredit that to two particular features. That's going to be the 29 plus rear tire, which I found to provide a very supple ride, both front and rear, and it provided a lot of cushion for impacts. Also, the second thing that makes a big difference is the fact that this is a chromoly steel hardtail rather than aluminum. Aluminum, it's just not supple, it's harsh. That's just the facts. Steel does a better job of muting imperfections on the trail and imperfections in the way that you ride, to the tune of this bike almost felt like a full suspension.
Not bad.
And I know that sounds crazy, but you have to remember that again, those tires are very high volume and the pressures that you can run in them are insane. I was running 13 PSI up front, 15 in the rear, and I was riding just like I normally do. I had no issues like smacking a rim. I had no issues burping out air. You can run some really ridiculously low pressure in these 29 plus setups. As far as the drivetrain is concerned, I was shocked at how well the expansion version of GX performs in comparison to the GXs I've owned in the past. One of my main gripes of the 10 to 50 tooth GX Eagle in the past was that it was noisy. There were certain gears that always tick, 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 ticked, and I could never solve it. As far as the GX expansion, that's not a thing. They must have worked out those kinks with the little rivets. I don't really know, but yeah, that drivetrain was perfect, and that 52 can get ridiculously low for the climbs. You pair that with the efficiency of a hardtail, and this bike climbs like an animal. As far as the seat and dropper goes, no complaints. You guys know I love the SDG Tellus. I've said that many times in the past. Normally I don't gel well with the WTB Volt, but this time there were no gripes. The bars are probably an 800 millimeter, 35 mil clamp, standard 25 mil rise type bar. No complaints. They are Esker in-house branded. They're probably being made by somebody else, but it doesn't say on the bar, so I'm not really sure. But it has some really cool graphics on it. I think it was an elephant or a woolly mammoth or something like that. Pretty exciting looking, not just plain black. Nice touch. Got to give it to them. As far as the MRP fork goes, for me personally, I felt that the MRP fork kind of is that intermediary performer between how a Fox feels and how a RockShox fork feels. For me, RockShox is more poppy and playful, and Fox is more plush. MRP was kind of somewhere in the middle. I did notice that the fork makes some damper noise. It's not offensive, but it's unique to the fork. But I can't complain with the way it performed. The headset was also provided by Wolftooth. It did have a creak in it when it came here, but that was due to a lack of grease. Obviously, me being the fantastic tech that I am, I was able to address that in a matter of seconds. The Industry 9 rear hub for the 1.1 is amazing. It is on par with the wheels that I ride by Session Components. It's just louder. But that's kind of the thing with Industry 9. People buy Industry 9 for those loud hubs, so I felt like that was on brand for them. They were not harsh in the chunks. It felt really, really supple when paired with those 2.8 tires. I would recommend them now that I've had a chance to ride them. As far as the brakes are concerned, the SRAM G2s are solid. They did make some noise, as you can probably hear in this clip.
Brakes are so loud, why?
But I don't know if that's normal for the G2s. I noticed that these rotors had been worn pretty heavily, and they may have some contamination on them, I don't know. But they stopped effectively. The guides were always spongy and did not have that definitive bite point that I like from brands like Shimano or Magura. However, the G2s were able to provide that for me, so I do like those brakes. I don't know if I would put them at the highest on my list because they still require the .4 fluid, which means that you have to use a syringe in both the lever and the caliper, and you can't just use a little cup and pour the fluid in it like you can with Shimano. So I'm still going to be partial to Shimano because of the simplicity of their bleed process. However, if I was to receive a bike with SRAM G2s, I would not be anxious to rip them off on day one like I would have been with the Guide Rs of the past. So that says a lot for those brakes. As far as the frame is concerned, again, I felt like the geometry was spot on perfect. The rear end was super short. That rear 29 plus wheel is almost slammed against the seat tube, so it's really active and playful and fun. The head tube angle was not too slack to where it felt like a chopper, but not too steep to where it felt like a cross-country bike. It's pretty much right where I want a trail bike to be. I felt right at home on the bike. You know, like I said, it's chromoly steel, so it was very supple, and it almost brought back some vibes of when I used to ride chromoly steel BMX bikes in the past. I was finding myself hopping things and, you know, bunny hopping and jibbing a little bit more than I normally do in a full suspension because the bike just begs for that type of behavior. So overall, I think that the bike is fantastic. I don't know if I would spend $3,300 of my hard-earned cash to buy one. However, I'm not in a position to do that. Hopefully some of you that are watching this video are considering this bike for yourself, and maybe $3,300 is a reasonable budget for you. If so, I don't think that this bike will let you down. Some of the things I like about it is that I know it'll be reliable. You can look at this bike and know that it's kind of been through the ringer and it still performs like brand new. The wheels are true, the brakes stop, everything works perfectly, and you can tell it's been worked pretty hard. So I like that about it. I love that it's a grab and go type bike. I love that it won't need as much maintenance as a full suspension because of the simplicity of the frame set. I think that this bike has a market, and I'm assuming that that market is here watching this video as I speak on it. So if this is a bike that you're considering for what it is, I hold it at a high regard. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm not a huge proponent of hardtails, especially when they get more expensive. I'm very much so a full suspension guy. However, if it was in my budget, I could see myself owning this Esker as something to ride on occasion just for that raw fun factor, because it was able to provide it. If you're a hardtail guy, do not overlook the Esker Japhy at all. It is a strong contender. Bike's pretty freaking sick. I also want to say a special thanks to Esker Cycles for giving me a chance and sending me the bike to review. I had a fantastic time riding your bike, and I hope that you guys enjoy the video as well, because I did it for you. But yeah, if this is your first time here at Cure Cycling checking out my videos, make sure to subscribe so you can see what other stuff that I'm up to. I review bikes all the time, different types. I do service tutorials as well as document my adventures, and even some live streams with some really cool personalities in the mountain biking realm. So please stay tuned to the channel. Make sure to like this button. Make sure to smash that like button if you enjoyed this video, because I did put a lot of work into it. Maybe leave a comment below. Tell me what you think about the bike and if you would spend $3,300 on a hardtail, because I am curious if there's people out there ready and willing to drop this kind of money on a hardtail. Let me know. Anyway, I will see you guys in the next one. As always, the ride is the cure. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Take care.